What hasn't changed that maybe we still need to get right?
The lack of commitment that nonprofits have to want to grow their recurring donors. It's like we want money now, and recurring giving is much more long-term. It's a challenge.
Erica Waasdorp, welcome to the Sustainable Giving Podcast.
Hey, thanks, Dave. So great to be here.
Oh my goodness. Well, this conversation, I'm trying to think how many years in the making, 30 years, 4 years, decades in the making. I am so excited to have you on the show because really you, as far as I'm concerned, you are, what do they say? The mother of monthly giving programs particularly in North America. And I'm just so grateful to get to geek out on sustainable giving with you.
Yeah. So, that's really, I guess, my legacy to nonprofit world in the U.S. to say, hey, start your multi-giving program. Yeah, that's been my thing.
What does that look like, and how can we take advantage of that? I remember, I've talked about this. I've been doing fundraising for 21 years, and including recurring giving. But really, as I started to look at the sector about 4 or 5 years ago, I said, you know what? It feels like there's some things that are going on in the recurring giving space. We've talked about that. You and I have talked subsequently about that quite a bit. And so I said, what are the books, that exist? Like, who's written on this topic before? And Erica, you have written 2 books on the topic.
I wrote 2 books.
As well as lots of articles. And I immediately came across your work. And I just thought, okay, well, then I need to talk to Erica. And you and I don't know if you remember this. We both ended up speaking on recurring giving at a conference in Milwaukee.
Yes.
That?
And we got together there too. And I was like, oh yeah, hey, Dave Raley, I got to check him out, so, because I don't think you and I had met yet. No.
We had not met at that time.
Yeah.
And you were so generous and so kind, and you have been ever since. I mean, you put together some of the most amazing research. We'll make sure people get a chance to find out where they can sign up and follow you later. But every Monday morning, I'm looking in my inbox for my email from Erica with, 12 or 15 links on, okay, there's this study that came out or whatever. And so it's always an honor when you feature anything that I've written or any of the work that we're doing. And so, yeah, it's just been fun. Well, one of the things that you talked about, and even in your bio, you say, you live and breathe recurring giving. So where did that start for you?
Well, I believe it or not, I've been doing direct mail for 42 years, long time, right? I started when I was 5, and was brought up at Reader's Digest. So actually, that's where I got involved in subscription giving, believe it or not, the magazine, right? So that was one of the biggest, biggest magazines in the Netherlands, because I'm from the Netherlands originally. So
now, wait a second. Were you involved with Reader's Digest, or are you just using it as an example?
No, I was. Yeah,
I love that.
I worked at Reader's Digest in Amsterdam, so that was my first job. So I really fell in love with direct mail, right, at the time. But again, I also got involved with subscriptions and what we call like retention efforts. We call them at Reader's Digest holding efforts.
Really?
Holding efforts. That's what they were called. So I had to do every 3 months. I think they were receiving things, and so they got it at the time. And then when I moved to the U.S. 32 years ago, I got involved with a nonprofit, and they asked me to take on their monthly giving program. And they had actually started a monthly giving program because their founder came from Canada. So, so he was probably a follower of Harvey McKinnon, right? So, because he was Canadian and he wrote
Who's
one
done
of
some
the
great
first
work
books
on recurring giving, yeah.
Yes, yeah. So, and he brought that to the U.S. And so I took on their monthly giving program and expanded it to 6 countries. So, we were in the U.S.,
Wow.
We were in Canada, in Germany, Holland, the UK, and Australia. So,
wow. Well, we're going to dive into that, and I'm fascinated by somebody who is from Europe, from the Netherlands, who's seen regular giving over there, has seen it over here, to really talk about how the state of recurring giving has really evolved tremendously in North America. Before we do that, though, you mentioned, you described yourself as a Dutch native who lives on Cape Cod. So I'm curious, how has your heritage shaped how you see the world or even how you approach generosity?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. I mean, I think from a, like as a business point of view, like my husband actually
Hmm.
came up with that term. Like the Dutch are very direct, right? We're
Very
not
direct.
pussyfooting
Hmm.
around, we're not. So that's why my company is called A Direct Solutions. So but again, it's very, I think, looking at generosity, looking at trends, whenever. I mean, the Dutch are very, analytical, and so I think that heritage has been, that's probably where a lot of that came from.
Yeah.
um One of the things that, for example, the Dutch don't do, that I've totally adopted in this country, is sending thank you notes.
Mm.
So that's a great way to build in that sort of
Hmm.
that thank you for the generosity piece, right? But yeah, I mean,
Wow.
so that's something new that I learned here, because normally the
Hmm.
Dutch go to somebody's house and say, and bring a bottle of wine or a box of chocolates or whatever, and that's the end of it. So they would
That's
look at
kind of
you
the
like,
end of it.
"What? You're sending me a thank you note for dinner?" That's kind of weird, but
Well, I'm always fascinated
yes.
at the intersection. A lot of our guests have talked about, their childhood or, a piece of their culture or,
I
and
mean,
so it's always
yeah.
interesting to just kind of see where those common threads
Yeah,
are.
I mean, I was a Girl Scout. My dad was a Boy Scout leader, so, but yeah, but giving was not something that I
Not
grew
as
up
big a
with
cultural
per
thing. Yeah.
se. No.
Yeah. Okay. So then let's talk about that. So you come to the U.S. Was it 30? You said 32 years
32
ago.
years ago. Yep. Hmm.
So think back of those early days. This first client you worked with, this Canadian charity. What was recurring giving like back then?
Well, they were actually very successful at the time. So,
Okay.
because
What
again,
kind
they
of charity was it? What kind
it
of
was
work
an
did they do?
it was an international animal organization.
Okay.
So yeah, and so they were actually very successful at the time. The UK was their biggest country, so
Fair.
followed by the Netherlands and Germany. And then also they had a pretty successful program in Australia and Canada. So the U.S. was actually the tiniest, the
Mm,
tiniest. They
okay.
had
Tell me
like
about that.
5,000 sustainers, at the time in the
Okay.
U.S. They had 170,000 sustainers in the UK, just
Wow.
for comparison, right? So it kind of shows you how people in Europe were much more, apt to give on a regular basis. So, smaller gifts, but they were
Yeah.
doing it on an automatic basis. So, and again, the banking system in most European countries was much more set up for that at the time.
Okay.
Like it was all
So
direct
you had the
debits, or EFTs as we call it here, right? So, yeah, that was
yeah.
already very common in Europe in
Well, and for
30
folks that are
years ago.
listening, yeah, and as folks listen to the show, we had a mutual friend of ours, Ken Burnett, on the show, who really was, in the late '60s, early '70s,
Yes.
really pioneering regular giving in the UK and in Europe. And so, you come 32 years ago, right? And you see that, right? You see this
Mm-hmm.
charity that has 100 and you said 170,000
170,000 in the
regular
UK.
givers
Yes. Yeah.
in the UK and
100,000 in Germany,
five in the
100,000
US.
yes, 5,000 in US. Yeah.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so now you think about, and this is the fun part of getting to have these conversations. So think about just the kind of what are some of the big changes or even inflection points you've seen in recurring giving here
Well,
in the North
yeah.
American context.
Well, again, the big thing is the channels, right? So again, 30 years ago, it was mail and phone and face to face. Street funding was
Mm-hmm.
starting to come up,
Yep.
right? A little bit of TV, direct response television, but online did not exist.
Right.
It it did not exist. So that has really changed. And even, like if you look back at like the donor-based CRMs or the online platforms, I mean, they really started 2013, and
Mm-hmm.
after. And then, I mean, for the longest time, I think I saw a couple of like donor-based CRMs that started adding a recurring giving option to their pages like in 2015,
Yeah.
So it hasn't been around, believe it, that's 10 years, So a lot has
Really.
changed in the last 10 years, especially, right? I mean, emails weren't sent out. I mean, that was not a thing in those days. So with that, monthly giving was actually much more expensive.
How
So
so?
well, I mean, mail and
More
phone
expensive to acquire, you mean?
more
Oh, yeah. If
expensive
you're
to
going to
acquire.
send a
Yes.
direct
Yes.
mail
Yeah.
acquisition to
Yep.
donors and
Mm-hmm.
hope to acquire them.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there was no other way, right? So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. So if we step back, we think about the last 30 years, right? The last 20 years has really been the kind of digital revolution,
right.
and that's kind of when I entered the scene, was like, ooh, this new internet thing, and
Yeah.
what's fundraising again? And so to see how fundraising has certainly obviously grown tremendously online, that's that kind of middle 10 years of the 30, right? Is that
Right.
middle 10
Yep.
years of
Yep.
people getting used to giving online. To your point about banking,
Mm-hmm.
and the sort of maturity of banking versus, in the Europe
Credit
versus
card.
the US, that's so interesting.
Yeah, I
Hmm.
think the other thing is credit cards. Again, credit cards were a much less common way to donate in Europe. It was
Yep.
all much more through a bank account, right? So, and that is obviously changing as
And
well.
I'm curious as to why you think that is the case in the US. I mean, maybe it's because the US can be so credit crazy, but maybe that's the simple answer. But like, why is it so? I don't know that it's hard these days, but why do people just default to the credit card? Because you and I know that the retention rates are so much higher on ACH or EFT because those credit cards don't, or
Right.
your
Yeah.
checking account number doesn't
Doesn't
change, but
change.
your
Right.
credit card does all the time.
Yeah.
Why is
Well,
that?
again, I think it's just like the way I mean, a lot of Europeans were growing up was like, okay, well, you got to be able to pay your bills. So, and yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I literally like my first credit card that I had in the Netherlands, I had to pay the whole amount off every month. There was no such thing as a credit card. It
Yeah.
was more a debit
Oh,
card,
right.
right? It
Because
was
it
more
was
like
like, yeah,
you
you better
have to
cover this
pay it off.
balance or we're
You
going to
got
call
to
you.
cover it, right? So I think that there's just a little bit of a mindset there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I am seeing in the US that a lot more organizations are testing defaulting to
Mm-hmm.
EFT on their
Mm-hmm.
forms. If again, more and more forms are offering e-checking or EFT, ACH, however they call it on their forms. So, but again, that is probably something of the last 5 years.
Yeah.
So, I
It
think
was
that's
It's so interesting. You'll appreciate this. About 3 weeks ago, as we record this, I was processing our credit card payment, and I saw a very large transaction that was not something that we did voluntarily. So sure enough, there was fraud. Somebody had somehow, some
Mhm.
breach had gotten access to our credit card. So I'm just like, "Ugh, I know where this is going." So I call the bank, and they immediately freeze the card, send you a new card. Now you got to go reset everything, and I was actually pleasantly surprised, Erica. It still wasn't very many, but
Mhm.
when I'm always using these as moments to say like, well,
Sure.
which charities are going to
Yes.
reach out?
Yes. Mhm.
And it was so interesting. Well, first of all, guess how many charities reached out?
Like 20% of the people that you were giving
Yeah,
to?
I'm trying to think of the total number, but literally one
Oh, one.
one
Okay.
charity
Yeah.
reached out.
Yes.
But to the point of ACH, I was pleasantly surprised that several of the organizations. I was like, wait, I thought I was giving via credit card. Well, for whatever reason, over the last couple of years, they've gotten us onto ACH, and so that's interesting.
Agreed.
What is something else that what actually we talked about what has changed over the last
Mhm.
20 or 30 years? I'm curious what hasn't changed that maybe we still need to get right.
Yeah, I mean, what hasn't changed is that that's why I have gray hair, right? It's like it's sort of the lack, and I think Ken mentioned this too in one of his in his interview with you recently, and the virtual panel that we all did, right? A while
Mm-hmm.
back was the lack of commitment that nonprofits have to want to grow
Mm-hmm.
their recurring donors. So it's a constant like seesawing. And I get it. It's like we want money now, and recurring giving is much more long term. So, but it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, we want money now, but we want long term. We want not your money now. We want long term, right? And so, and it's like, I think that's really a challenge because it's constant like battling with the people in the
Yeah.
organization as to, well, I want more Montanos and I want more gifts, and so it's and for some reason, unless you really show them that lifetime value, proven of campaigns that you did a couple of years ago, it's like, well, I don't know, so it's just like it's a challenge. I find it
Yeah.
very, very challenging, even with organizations that have a large number of recurring donors already. And I mean,
Mm.
I mean, if you look at like organizations like the ASPCA, I mean, 60% of their revenue comes from recurring giving, right?
Yeah. Wow.
But even that in the early days, from the folks that were, I remember working there, like the Steve Frolics of the world, who's now with St. Jude, and so that was a battle for them at the time too. So, but once they
Hmm.
got through that hump, then it was like, oh man,
Yeah.
yeah,
Once you have 20 or
I-
30 or 60% of your revenue basically bankable every year, then your tune
yeah.
tends to change, Erica.
But I think part of it is too is like how how people show the revenue, right? So like like if you say, well, all right, I'm only showing the revenue that comes in during that year,
Hmm.
then it doesn't look that good because, hey, we're in, like the third or fourth month of the fiscal year, and all right, that money hasn't come in yet. But if you look at it like saying, okay, well, I know based on what was the end of last year, say 10 million, right?
Yep.
So that 10 million is already going to come in if you do it right, that you can
Hmm.
count on, even if for some reason you can't do anything else, right? That 10
Right.
million is going to come in. But it's a different way of looking at the revenue that comes in and saying, all right, rather than just like, oh yeah, we're at 2 million now. No, no, no. We know that we're going to get 10 million, and everything else is
Yep.
basically gravy, right? So, and I think, one of the things, I mean, I worked at this organization and September 11 happened. Again, 20 years ago,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
24 years ago now. So, and before that, again, even I had to battle with my boss and saying, hey, even with 117,000, recurring donors, it was like, well, yeah, but we're down on one-time revenue. And then September 11 happened and we couldn't go out in the mail and for a couple of months. People were really, really nervous, right? So, and all of a sudden they're like, wow, this is great. This money keeps coming in, right? From all of
Right.
these different countries. Hey, maybe we need to focus a little bit more on that, right? So that's when they all of a sudden started adding face to face and they went into more TV
Okay.
and now they're doing digital, so they've really focused on growing that recurring revenue. So, but it's
Yeah.
until they get shocked, it's
Hmm.
sometimes it's like, they need to have that wake up call until
Well,
that happens.
the cliche is don't waste a good crisis. A friend of mine said it this way. He said, you got to look for a crisis-tunity. And I was like, what does that
Oh, I
even
like
mean? And he
that.
said,
Yeah.
it's a crisis, but it's an
Yes.
opportunity.
Yeah.
And I said, his name's John Lee, by the
Yeah.
way, if you
Yeah.
want to look
Yeah.
him up.
Yeah.
I asked him, I said, oh, can I use that? He said, sure. It's from The Simpsons. I'm like, really? Apparently it was wisdom from Homer
Yeah.
Simpson. So
Yeah.
you're welcome. We got to look for a crisis-tunity.
Yeah. But if you look at the fact that, in Canada right now, there is like a postal strike going on, right? Well, that could
Right.
happen in the US, right? So, well, what if you can't get out in the
What do
mail,
we use?
guys?
How can
You
we
know?
leverage that? Well, in disasters, one of the things I'm sure you've seen as well, you talk about obviously 9/11. I have clients right now. I mean, there's always clients that are
Yes. Oh, yeah.
dealing with disasters,
USAID.
but
Yep. Sure.
either humanitarian disasters or otherwise. And it's like, what are we doing to actually invite and convert those? I mean, classically, as you know, you've been doing direct marketing twice as long as I have. That disaster donors often are not exactly going to give again,
Mm-hmm.
until the next disaster.
Yep.
But and that's the thing about the last 10 years, and I'm curious to have what you've seen in this space is that actually recurring giving, sustainable subscriptions, all the things
Right.
have actually made those disaster donors actually willing to give to
Yes.
organizations,
Right.
not just that one time, but that convert to recurring. You're seeing that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. And again, if you
Wow,
look at the M&R strategic benchmarks, I mean, just looking at the online,
some
I
of the
mean,
best data.
recurring giving is the one big thing that's growing. I mean, so one-time gifts are dropping online as
Yeah,
well. So
yeah.
it's like, hey, how do we make up for that, right? So
And how do we address that? And you were addressing earlier that kind of mindset. I kind of refer to it as the single gift mindset.
yes.
And we tend to not know that we're swimming in those waters. But if you're in fundraising, if you're listening to this, you are likely swimming in the single gift waters and you don't even realize it. You just
Mhm.
tend to think about, no, this is fundraising or this is direct response. And the reality is there's multiple different, if you think about your major gifts program, for example, most people do not think about their major gifts program the same way they think about their direct mail program,
Mhm.
for example.
Mhm.
You need to think about the same level of difference between your recurring gift program
Right.
and your direct response program. Those are related. There are some tactics and strategies that we can use, but those are two different things, and we need to lean into this sustainability mindset.
Yeah, and if you look at the fact that the average recurring donor is a mid-level donor for a lot of organizations, right? So, and I think, one of the things too is, I mean, if you look at like an organization like Charity Water, right? A lot of people love looking at their stuff, right? It's like they're great examples. And, but the real big thing that they did was in 2015 saying, look, one-time gifts, great, we love them, but we really need sustainable revenue. So let's focus on, this program that they call the Spring, right? But it's like
Yeah.
they really changed the mindset and said, that's what
Mm-hmm.
we're going to focus on. And, and I think that's what sometimes it's lacking with a lot of like huge organizations is like they say they want it, but then when it comes down to it's like, oh well, but we can't take away from this program and we can't, so it's that short-term
Yeah.
mindset still.
Well, and fresh energy, fresh leadership, fresh perspective. I just had a great episode that recently launched with Sophia Machado Limas at
Oh
Operation
yeah,
Smile,
Operation
talking
High.
about their
Yes, she's
journey
great. Yes.
from really a single gift mindset to what you and I would call sustainer first or
Yeah. Right.
mindset. And it was a multiple year journey, and it was rocky. But they're on the other side of that journey now, and in their case, 30% of revenue from recurring, which is tremendous. So I want to keep going because we've got a lot of ground to cover, and you have so much wisdom. So one of the things that I want to think about is, just the go-to strategies for today to help organizations grow. So if you could, Erica, this is a fun game. If you could keep just 2 core strategies, you had to get rid of everything else, and you had to lead with 2 strategies. What are those things that you've seen work again and again?
I mean, the easiest is like, add some buttons to your emails.
Yeah,
It's
visibility.
visibility is really what it comes down to. I mean, I have one organization, they tested adding a monthly giving button to their homepage. Literally, donate now, give monthly.
Get
They
monthly. Yeah.
doubled the number of monthly donors that came from their website.
Let's
Right.
do
I
that.
mean, so it's a button, people. So, and the same with emails, right? I mean, like add a button, give monthly, and I mean, World Vision does that every month, right? So it's like every time they send an email out on the bottom is like, make it monthly. And I mean, again, just starting, it's
I
literally
love that.
planting the seed, right? So add some buttons. Um, the second strategy is like, yeah, I mean, just like add in some extra opportunities to consider it, right? So and also I think if you have some monthly donors, ask them why they're giving monthly, get their feedback, and use
Mm-hmm.
that as a testimonial to reach out to others, right? So, because donors love hearing from other donors. So if you say, well, hey, I became a monthly donor because it's just the easiest way. And I know that, I help this organization, whatever the organization is, on an ongoing basis. So,
Yeah.
yeah, get some
So
donor
what I'm
testimonials. Yep.
so
Buttons,
make it visible.
Yep.
Like by the way, you'll love this. I
Yes.
just got off the phone with a client an hour ago, and it's a new senior executive, and she said, "Why wouldn't we just put recurring giving everywhere?"
Yeah.
And she said that like almost apologetic, like,
Yeah.
is that the wrong strategy? I was like, no,
No.
that's the right
Yeah.
strategy.
Yes. Right.
That's very advanced for some
Right.
people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So make it visible. Invite periodically, like actually have some outbound, invitation campaigns. I don't know what you would refer to
Mm-hmm.
them as, but
Mm-hmm.
actually do
Yes.
proactively,
Yep.
periodically invite folks.
Yep.
And talk to your donors.
Yep.
Let's do it. I love it. Are you looking to build a thriving recurring giving program, but not sure where to start? I want to introduce you today to the Sustainable Giving Self-Assessment. Developed from years of research and thousands of hours of experience, this short assessment is for nonprofit leaders and fundraisers who want to build a long-lasting stream of sustainable, recurring revenue. Go to sustainablegiving.org to take this free assessment. It's just 30 questions and takes 7 minutes. Afterward, you'll receive a personalized report on the state of your recurring giving program and what areas you should focus on. Are you ready to get clarity on how to grow sustainable giving? Go online and take the assessment today at sustainablegiving.org. Okay, what's a channel or approach you think is underrated right now?
Underrated. At times I find like direct mail is underrated and telemarketing is too. So,
Okay, let's talk about that.
yeah, I mean, we all want it to be digital and because that's the cheapest, right? But if you were, you grew as an organization based on direct mail, right? I mean, give the donors the opportunity to become a monthly donor, right? So, and again, there's so many low cost, low negative impact, if you will, where you can add something to your appeal or you can do some special invitations during the year. Because if you look at and again, I think the other piece is like evaluate, well, what is the cost of doing something like that, right? You know what the cost is for a direct mail campaign, right? So, evaluate it and say, well, all right, if you can bring a sustainer in for $150 and they're going to give, for 5 to 10 years, I mean, that's a great return on investment, right? So, but again, you just got to evaluate, but you got to evaluate with the long term in mind, right? So, on telemarketing, you may not call it telemarketing. Maybe you call it a texting campaign, but use the phone, right? So, in addition to some of the other things that you're doing, so phone still is great. People may not necessarily answer it, but you can leave a voice message, or you can ring this voicemail, or so there's a lot of different ways to use the phone in conjunction, especially with some of the other channels. So, because it's not going to come just from digital, and it's not going to come from social media, So, it's really that combination, I think. So
so interesting. And again, you've been in this space for a minute. I think about there's some sort of psychological reality that the more you can actually, for lack of a better term, interrupt the donor, more you can actually get their attention. If it's a live event, oh my gosh, you've got their entire attention, right? If it's phone, you're talking to them. If it's even direct mail, I was talking to a friend the other day, and it's like, I don't even see 60% of the emails that come to me because they get put into the whatever box and I don't even see it. But I do flip through the direct mail, right? And so that's such a powerful channel. And I realize, yes, it's more expensive, but especially at least in the experience we've had, I'm curious as to your experience, especially new donors, like a direct mail invitation to recurring giving is really powerful.
Yep. Or a thank you letter. And a thank you letter. It's like I was just evaluating in the thank you letter. Yep.
And the phone. And then, yes, absolutely. I do think texting, I don't know if I would call texting underrated. It's sort of underdeveloped right now.
Yeah.
But every organization that I'm talking to that's doing anything with texting is seeing really bright spots. There are small bright spots typically because the lists aren't usually huge.
Right. Yeah.
But that's definitely one as well. Okay. I want to ask you some questions. You've worked with fundraisers around the world. You've traveled around the world. You've spoken. You and I have talked about, these fundraising congresses, International Fundraising Congress. What have you noticed about how different cultures approach generosity that we might be able to learn from?
I mean, I think in general, and again, working with an international organization where we would like take, a message that worked in the US and we would send it to Germans and Dutch and UK folks. And the German office manager would say, that's not going to work here. That's not going to work here. And, we would always translate it, obviously, a little bit and adapt it to the payment methods. But So in other words, if he
It would
said it's
work.
not going to work, oh man, it would be
It's gonna work.
gangbusters, right?
It
So
turns out
it
we're
turns
human
out
beings.
we're human beings, so what works in you, and I think that's like something. So in other words, like just because you work in a different country doesn't necessarily mean that you have to totally do something different, right? Because again, you're working with emotions, you're working with like allowing a donor to help you,
Hmm.
and monthly giving happens to be the way that's comfortable for them, right? That's how they want to give. That's how they want help, right? So give them that opportunity. So I think it's more like, and I think the other general thing is, I literally have a T-shirt that says, "Hold on, let me overthink this." So we fundraisers tend to overthink things, right? And we assume things about our donors when we really, don't necessarily know if that's true, right? So I think, yeah, I mean, in general, people
Hmm.
are generous. People want to help. They want to make a difference. And I think that's universal. What channels are being used in that country can be a little bit different, right? Like in the Dutch, in Holland, for example, they would literally like go door to door with a collections box, right? In the old
Okay.
days. So, I mean, that would not fly in the US, right? Or much harder. So, but yeah, so I think that there was different channels
Hmm.
that might work in different countries. Like I know some Latin American countries are totally digital now, so Italy has a hard time with their post office and, postal systems, whatever. So every organization that is different, but
Hmm.
in general, people
Yeah.
want to help, right? So,
Well, I'm so interested because you're a very well-traveled person. Is there any stories from your travels that's either really stayed with you, a person or a moment that's changed the way you think about this work?
wow. I mean, no, I mean, it's more like, again, like try to, if you're in a different country, I mean, try to kind of be as much as a local as possible. So
Hmm.
I think you have to
Hmm.
you have to adapt, right? I think that's really
Yeah.
what it is, right? You can't be taking your Dutch self per se into America. You can't be taking your American attitude into some of these other countries because they're like, oh man, so I think you just have to adapt to their culture. And if you don't know, ask questions, right?
Yeah.
So, and again, people love to help you, right? They love
Hmm.
to say, well, here's what we do with tipping, or here's what we do with that, right? Or here's like a typical average gift is this in this country. Like,
Hmm.
like in the UK, a lot of average gifts are much lower than, in British
Yeah.
pounds than they are in American dollars, right? So,
Yeah. I,
yeah, you have to
I wonder,
adapt.
in fact, you mentioned that, and Ken's mentioned that. I've noticed, a lot of regular giving we've talked about in the
Yeah, three
UK
pounds.
it's yeah, £3 a month or whatever. Is that a is that an insight we should be using in North America? I've always felt torn about that. The classic fundraising direct response, approach I've learned is, if they give less than $10, then their long term value is not going to, outweigh their cost or
Well,
whatever.
it depends on the type of organization, right? So, like, for example, animal charities, right? A lot of people give small gifts, but they
Hmm.
gave a lot of them, right?
Yeah.
And then what you find out is all of a sudden you get like a $50,000 legacy gift from these
Hmm.
people who were giving $5 a month, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's more like in terms of generosity in general, and I know we have to cut it up somewhere. We gotta because we can't like thank everybody personally, whatever. We can't send as many thank you letters out. But again, don't assume that just because somebody only gives you $3 that's that
Yeah.
they don't care. That may be all they can give at that
Right.
point but it's still it should be valued, right? So and I
Yeah.
think sometimes we were like, well, no, if they're giving $25, I'm not even going to thank them, right? I'm not even things like so you just got to be a little bit careful with
Yeah.
that.
You want to show that
Yeah,
gratitude and
gratitude
and
is key.
and it's
Yes.
it's and more often than not in our culture, in our environment, I do see people giving higher average gifts. We had a
Mm-hmm.
client that had a donor sign up for $5,000 a month, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, if that's
Great.
what your comfort zone is, great.
Right.
But I do wonder sometimes, like, if our ask arrays, which tend to be a little bit higher, right, certainly than the UK, if there aren't some examples where maybe we should be looking for those
Yeah.
hey, give $5 a
I
month
mean,
to make this thing
I've
happen.
done some testing for one of my clients that was actually an animal charity where we started with a lower gift.
Hmm.
And I've heard, like, I think PETA did a test a while back, like a couple of years ago, in an email, and they asked for $2 a month,
Okay.
and then drove people to a donation page, and the $2 was there, but there was also these other options, right? And what they
Hmm.
found is they got more people to go there. They
Right.
ultimately got more monthly gifts, and the average gift on average was still this pretty similar to other campaigns that they had done, right?
Oh, it was still a higher average
So
gift.
it
So
was
people were like,
still,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then,
yeah,
oh, yeah, I can do
yeah,
20
well,
bucks
yeah,
or
I
whatever.
can do 10, whatever. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but it was like, oh, as little as $2. Yeah, oh, let me
Hmm.
check that out,
That's
right?
interesting. As little as, I like that. That's interesting.
So again, it's worth a
Hmm.
test, right? So, like, if you can test it, absolutely. So yeah, so again, it's just like, especially with monthly giving, it's like, yes, as little as 63 cents a day, right? I mean, so it just you want to give the donor the feeling that they can make a difference with a small gift as well. And then when they
Hmm.
go to your page, you're like, oh yeah, I can do $25 a month. I can do $50 a month,
Right.
right? So yeah.
That's good. That's good. That's wisdom. Hey, so one of the things I really appreciate about you is the fact that you have been invested in this sector. I mean, really, you are the flag waver in North America here. You mentioned a couple other names, Harvey in Canada, Harvey McKinnon, and Ken in
Burnett.
Burnett in the UK.
Yeah.
But you've seen the generations, and so one of the things I love about you is that you're not just thinking about the impact of what sustainable giving can do for organizations to date, but also the future and the legacy of sustainable
Hmm.
giving. And so,
Hmm.
you've been teaching and writing and mentoring for years. I'm curious, what do you hope for in the next generation of sustainable fundraisers?
So that's a great question. So, I mean, again, I think, again, my legacy is that I want more organizations to, I mean, see the light and say,
Hmm.
hey, like, there is definitely this sustainable giving is
Yeah.
not going away. It's just like something that you have to adopt and grow. And I think once you have put that piece, together and say, okay, now I've got a system, I've got a process in place where I start adding monthly donors on a regular basis. Now I can say, okay, well, hey, what's the next step? Or guess what?
Hmm.
Legacy gifts come from these smaller donors. And this is where, I talked to Richard Ratcliffe, who is
Okay.
very well known in the UK. He's a legacy consultant,
Hmm.
and he's done a lot of research through the company that he worked for before, where they were literally like reading every British will, and they saw
Wow.
how many charities does the average person have in their will?
Okay.
Is that different by type of organization? So animals, animal folks tend to have maybe seven
Okay.
charities in their will, because there's a lot of animal charities where they really, really care. Religious organization might have five, so he looked at all of that and then also said, okay, well, where did those legacy gifts come from? It's not necessarily from the $1,000 donor, right? It's from those small monthly donors. So there's, and he came up with, like, looking at all that, like, saying six times the average monthly donor is six times more likely to
Yeah.
leave you in their will because they're invested in your organization.
Mm.
They
Yeah.
care. They give to you for years and years and years. They want you to succeed, right? They want the
Yeah.
organization to succeed. They want the organization to be there for many, many years to
Yeah.
come, right? So that's kind of like, so that's sort of the typical long-term vision, I guess,
Hmm.
whether it's consciously or subconsciously. It's like that's what these monthly donors look for you as an
Yeah.
organization to succeed, right? And they're willing to invest now, small, and down the road, when they've passed on, right? So
Yeah. That's so
so
powerful.
yeah.
if I think about somebody who's just getting started in recurring giving, let's say they've seen the light, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've
Yeah.
read your book, they've read my book,
Yes. Yes.
they're listening to the show right
Yes.
now,
Yeah.
actually.
Mm-hmm.
What's if you could give one piece of advice to somebody who's just getting started in recurring giving, what would it be?
I would say just start with one thing. Just, literally you could,
One thing.
just start with one thing. I mean, I literally was talking to a small organization and I said, let's add a button to an email, right? And then the next, a couple of weeks later, I said, guess what, Erica? We got 8 monthly donors, right? And from that,
Mm,
for them, that was a lot of new monthly donors, right?
yep.
That they'd never seen before. And they just literally added this one button to an email, right? So, and then it's like, okay, well, now with that, let's see if we can add that button to that homepage because they were just in the process of like redoing their website, right? So, I think just like, start with one thing. You can always add more as
Mm-hmm.
you see it growing, right? But also don't give up too soon, right? I mean, like monthly
Yeah.
giving is not something that you just say, well, we'll just do something in January and forget about it the rest of the year. No, it's just sort of like, where can you plant the seeds? Where can you add that one thing, in the mix of what you're doing? and
Yeah.
and don't overthink it. I mean, there's just so much overthinking going on. It's like, well, what if should the button be green or red? It doesn't really matter, right? Should it have like how large should it be? I mean, so there's just like, and
Yeah.
just do it.
Yeah.
Take a Nike approach and say, just do it. What do you got to lose? It's one email. It's one
Yeah.
button. It's okay. So I think that's just like, don't be afraid to succeed or
Yeah.
or to fail even, because that's where you learn from, right? Again, that's indirect mail. We're used to testing, and yeah, sometimes a test works and sometimes a test doesn't work well, and you do something else, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I had a wise mentor, also direct marketer,
Yeah.
once tell me, Dave, make decisions. Like make a decision
Yes.
and then make it right.
Yeah.
And it's like, but you can't make it right if you don't make a decision,
Right.
right? And so I think that's good advice. That's wisdom. And it's always fun when somebody on a podcast says, "What's the one thing?" Right? Because the reality is, there's no one thing. It's like make the one thing and then the next thing. I had said I was speaking at a conference in Orlando
Yeah.
last week, and somebody came up to me and said, basically, "What's the one thing?" Or when do I start? Like, I'm thinking next
Yeah.
spring, and
Yeah.
blah blah blah. And I
Start
said, like,
now.
just start now,
Yes. Yeah.
because it's not going to be
Yes.
the one thing.
Yes.
Like, it's
Right.
going to be the first 100 things that you do that are
Yeah.
ultimately going
Right.
to push you forward. And so don't try to wait for the perfect moment and the
And
perfect
maybe you should say,
circumstances.
take one step. Take the first step.
Oh, that's
Maybe
good.
that's like
Take
the
the first
better
step.
thing. Take the first step
A
and then
journey of
add
a
some more,
thousand
right? Yes.
miles
Yes.
begins with
Yeah.
one
Because I
step. I
mean,
love
great
that.
things are done by a series of small things put together, right? So if it's a
Hmm.
quote that I like to use. So, or the other one is like, what's the best time to plant a tree? That was like 20 years ago, but the next best time is now, right? So you start
I know you
planting the
like that.
trees,
I
right?
know you like that quote
Yes,
because
I
I have
do
your
like
book
that
right
quote.
here, and it's
Yes,
right there on
yes,
the front.
yes,
For those of us
yes, yes.
video
Right,
listeners, you
right.
can see. But no, that's so powerful. So what's one thing you wish more leaders understood about investing in sustainability?
Yeah, I mean, again, like, don't wait. I think that's like,
That's the thing.
don't
It's
wait
yeah.
till the perfect, like, don't wait till the
Hmm.
next budget. And especially again with digital, with emails, it's like it's like we didn't have the tool. I mean, like when I started on monthly giving, it was hard. It was like we had banking tapes, and it was just like there was a lot of like operations back
Mm,
end stuff that we had to do. Now it's like, you've got your tools, you've got your online platform, you've got your donor base. And again, I mean, I know sometimes people say, well, I got to get a new database first. No, you don't. I got
yeah.
to get a new platform first. No, you don't. Yeah, but that looks cooler than this. And isn't that better? And just start with what you have.
Just start. Just
And,
start.
just start. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, so good. So good. Well, before I've kind of final question or two, but before we do that, you have been such a, like I said, a generous voice in this community, and not only for so long, but you have continued to really invest. And so I'm thankful for you for doing that. As people, like I said, I mentioned some of the stuff that you do. Where can people best find you? Where would you send
Yeah,
folks?
go to my website, adirectsolution.com, adirectsolution.com.
Pretty
And
simple, pretty
yeah,
direct.
pretty direct. Yes. Thank you, my husband. Yeah. So,
I love that.
yes. Yeah.
I love that. That's great. Okay, so if a listener could take one thing from our conversation today, one change that they could make, what do you hope it is?
Just start.
Just start.
Just start. Don't wait. And use your tools. You have them. You don't need
Yeah.
any new tools. You just start.
Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, Erica, thank you for your wisdom. Thanks for your continued investment in the sector, for your investment in me. You and I back channel all the time. You are so generous and hey, take a look at this if you've seen this, and again, turning around and sharing any of the stuff that
Yeah.
we're working on. And so I'm just so grateful. We need an army of people. Thank
Yeah,
goodness.
we
Hopefully
need
it's
more.
not just you and I and a
Yes.
couple others,
Yeah.
right? We
Well,
need an
you're
army
doing a
of
great
folks that
job.
see
You're doing a
this.
great job getting some of the people on your podcast and the articles that you write about. People that have been saying it. And I think the more people, I mean, that's why I'm excited now. It's like I'm getting older, right? So, but I'm excited for people like you that are younger, that are, taking the baton, if you will, and maybe engage even some more younger people that are saying, oh, I've seen the light, I believe in this. And again, like that's the key. So, and
Yeah.
one final thing is, you've said it, you're giving monthly to organizations. I'm giving monthly to organizations. Start by giving monthly to a couple of organizations so that you could see what they're doing, right? So, because, it's not rocket science. There's a lot of things are already out there that you can borrow, because that's what I love about this sector, right? It's like, we like sharing things, right?
Yeah.
Because every organization is different and similar in some ways, but again, so we can learn from each other, and so we can share these experiences, we can share these results, we can share some of the tools and techniques that work, and yeah, try them, because it's there for the borrowing, if you will, right? So yeah.
I love it. That's so good. That's a great way to end. Again, thank you for your just continued investment in the sector and for your generosity and bringing all of who you are into helping organizations grow and lead. And I'm the better for it, and I know our listeners will be as well.
Great.
Thanks, Erica.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Sustainable Giving Podcast. I hope you found the information helpful and that you're able to walk away with some powerful tools that you can use to start building a steady stream of recurring revenue for your organization. For more information about the topic and to take the Sustainable Giving self-assessment, visit us online at sustainablegiving.org. While you're there, you can pick up your copy of The Rise of Sustainable Giving, your guide to growing recurring giving. And hey, would you do me a favor? If a person comes to mind that you think would benefit from this episode, would you mind sharing this episode with them? Just that little act could be the difference that they need to start growing sustainable giving for their own organization. And there's one other thing that you can do that would be a huge blessing to me. I've timed it and it takes just 16 seconds. Would you consider rating the show? Just head to the show page on the app of your choice, and if you've enjoyed this show, hit the 5-star review. Bonus, if you want to leave a comment, I would love to hear what you think. Special thanks to the entire team at Imago Productions for bringing this show to life. Abigail, Christine, Grace, Kirsten, and Tom, this would not be possible without you. Until next time, thank you for joining us, and keep inspiring generosity.